Where's my desktop? There we go. All right. Still not getting.
I have to be able to go back to, I have to go back to pull up the Elmo. Where is it? Oh, can you do that again?
What do you want me to do?
I want to get to the Elmo. That's what I want. Okay, now I can put that down over here to the side.
Yeah.
All right, let me try something and see something here.
All right.
All right, are you getting letters correctly here?
Hello?
Yeah, okay. All right, that's good. Okay, that's good. All right. That's okay. That's good.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to test because I'm getting an echo.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
All right, so I have to be on, I'll be on mic. And the folk are here. Dr. Nichols, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good. All right.
All right.
So we're going to get started. And guess what? It's not on. Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good.
Good.
All right. We're going to get started, but we're going to have to go back and forth between the presentation because it's not showing up on my system.
What's not showing up?
I'm going to mute
everyone.
And we're going to get started,
okay?
Okay.
We can stay down here. It's so good. Look at all there. Hello. Look at all of you. Welcome. Forgive us on the feedback. Some people said we couldn't do this. that we couldn't do the virtual and have people in place, but don't you know, God says we can do whatever God would let us to do. So we are so glad to be here with our 5th annual Juneteenth celebration. And I'll introduce Dr. Nichols in a minute, but just welcome. And we'll try to make this work. We are going to make this work. Is this Mom? Oh, hi, Mom. Oh, this is so good. And so I'm going to turn over to our program manager, who is going to have her remarks. And we do want you to know, if you go to the FAME website, under Juneteenth, there is a digital program for the whole weekend. And you can find everything, right? Who is that sitting next to you, Laura? Hi, Sherry. Hi. And so we're going to have Irene Leitz, Dr. Leitz is going to make some introductory remarks about Juneteenth. Then we're going to have an acknowledgement of the land by Deacon Steve Morello.
Thank you, Dr. Pat. I'm Irene Leitz, and I sort of happened into the role of program manager. I was on the committee last year, and I said, oh, we can make some changes. And as soon as you say that, you know what happens. So, you are the people who know how that works. We are here for the first of our 5-day events with Dr. Edwin Nichols on the essence of human differences, understanding self and others. And we are so pleased that you are here, and those of you that are joining us on Zoom are also here with us, because these are important ideas. They're sort of at the basis of why we celebrate Juneteenth and why we as a community want to come together, whether we are Black people or white people or anybody else. We want to come together to celebrate the holiday with our Black brothers and sisters, but we also want to emphasize and learn how to use the skills that people have for survival, for understanding each other, for working through problems, overcoming difficulties, and use those skills today in this time to make sure that we can start to remove, well, not just start, that we can continue to remove barriers that are facing so many people in our society today. And so Juneteenth is our opportunity to come together and practice living democracy. And that's why we're really glad that you are here and that we have an opportunity to hear Dr. Edwin Nichols, who is really, I don't know if he'd want to be called the godfather, but he's one of the basic theorists and researchers and practitioners in the whole field related to the idea of cultural paradigms that we carry around with us and cause us to act out of bias or fear or habit. Any of those things. So we are thrilled that he is able to be here with us, and we are very grateful to Dr. Pat Coleman-Burns for organizing us again this year. She is one of our pillars of the community, as you all know, and we just couldn't, I don't think we could function without her. So we're very grateful to her for being that kind of person, that kind of leader in the community. And we also are very grateful to Narden Park United Methodist Church for hosting us here and for being such an active part of the celebration. They have contributed hours and hours, as well as financial support for much of what's going on. And that's not to say that we don't still need support. We do. We need more volunteers. We need more contacts in the community. We want more partnerships next year. And certainly we can use your donations. So on the table out there, there are not enough copies of this expensive little flyer. When you have lots of colors, they get expensive, you know. But if you would like the information that's on this flyer, If you hold your phone, your camera over the QR code, the funny little puzzle thing, the maze thing in the corner, generally your phone will say, oh, this is a QR code for such and such a website. And that will take you to our website, and you can get the information about all of the events over the next 5 days. And so we have coming up after Dr. Nichols tonight, tomorrow night we have the family movie Under the Stars. They'll be showing The Princess and the Frog and having all kinds of fun together. And that's right here in the parking lot. On Saturday, rather than compete with all of the other celebrations in the area, we're going to be doing what we call the fellowship tour of area June 19th celebrations. And a bus will leave Narden Park's parking lot at 10 a.m. And we're first going to the West Bloomfield Juneteenth celebration. And then around noon or so, we're going to pick up and go to the Novi celebration at the Novi Public Library. And next year we'll add more sites, but that's what we're doing this year. So that's Saturday, Saturday. And then Sunday we have a wonderful interfaith healing service put together by Reverend Stancy Adams, who's a member of the group that I am the executive director of, Conversations on Race. We're one of the partners in this endeavor. And Reverend Stancy has gathered some very interesting figures from multicultural backgrounds who will share with us methods of healing. And so we found this a really enlivening and rehabilitating kind of experience last year, and so people asked if we would do that again this year. So that's on Sunday from 3 to 4:30 right here in this room at the Narden Park Sanctuary. And on Monday is the Freedom Celebration that, as the poster says, it's full of food, fun, and activities. A long list. Rather than spend our time on that now, listing what you can see on the Facebook page day by day with all of the details, all of our vendors, all of our supporters. Thank you to everybody. It's all on the Facebook page. So please look for us at Facebook. And the name of the page is J19th with a TH 23. But I'm sure if you just look for annual Farmington Area Juneteenth celebration, it'll come up. Okay, so thank you all for being here. Please enjoy the program, and I know you will learn a lot. I hope you will engage with the ideas and with Dr. Nichols. Thank you.
So Deacon Steve, as he comes, it's always important for us to remember that thousands of years ago, this land was occupied, the land that we stand on right now. And it belongs to our ancestors, of which, Steve, I claim. So please give the acknowledgement of the land on which we stand.
Thank you, Reverend Dr. Pat. It's an honor to be with you this evening as we give thanks to God the Creator. God the Creator who made this earth and made this place and gifted it to us. First was gifted to the Ojibwa people and the Odawa people and the Ojibwa, Odawa, and the, together they are the Anishinaabe people, but the one I forgot was Potawatomi. Ojibwa, Odawa, and Potawatomi. Together, we are the Anishinaabe people, the first people of the land. And so we give thanks. We give thanks for the creation of this land. We give thanks for the gift of this land to us. We give thanks for the people who came before us in these tribes, known as the Fire Keepers. And we give thanks for freedom. We give thanks for our freedom of conscience to worship as we would. We give thanks to the freedom that we have in this country that was not always free and was not always a gift, that had to be fought for in a struggle. And in that good native way, I would like to make an offering of tobacco in the 6 directions. In native spirituality, this tobacco, sacred tobacco, is offered to Father Sky and Mother Earth. It's offered to the north direction and the south direction and the west and to the east, so that in each of these directions we might be united with the land, united with the Lord, and united with each other. Miigwech.
Thank you. I met Dr. Nichols back in the 90s. I don't even remember, Dr. Nichols, how I first heard of you. But I brought him to deal with issues of health inequities. And I became a believer ever since. He subsequently was able to make a full analysis of the University of Michigan health system. They didn't quite listen at that time, but he still has made that important distinction. So we've been doing Juneteenth for 5 years. And in the middle of COVID, we asked Dr. Nichols and Dr. Joy DeGruy to come and speak to us virtually. Some of you were there. And it was just an amazing way in which he has of looking at how we see the world differently based on our cultures and where we may be out in space. I'll let him do his own work. But let's welcome Dr. Nichols as he teaches to us, and we will have some small group discussions. In the process, we'll have 2, and we're going to ask you to be in dyad so we can do it quickly, and to come back, and we'll give more directions as we move forward. But Dr. Edwin Nichols.
Good afternoon. I want to thank you for the opportunity of sharing concepts and ideas with you. And I will begin with, we're going to work, I work like with a board, okay? So I'm going to be working from this space. And I hope now all of you can see that. Okay.
We cannot see the board.
Oh, you cannot see it. Okay, let me see what's going on here. You can't see my hand?
No.
I don't know why I can't.
Let me suggest that you turn your camera down towards your hands.
No, this is from the Almo. There, can you see this paper in my hand at all? Here? You could before, and I don't know why you can't see it now. Take my picture off and just put this up. Can you see it now? We just saw it. Can you see my hand? Do we have to share the screen or something?
It's going to say share screen. Oh,
There
there
we
you
go.
go. And then you're going to want to make it full.
Okay, now you can see my hand. Can you see my hand now? Okay, all right, okay. First of all, we want to look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I want to go over them with you, and the reason I'm going over them with you is because as we talk about the essence of ethnic difference, different ethnic groups start at different points on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We have the physiological needs, which are food, water, shelter, sleep. We have safety, and then we start with the desire to be accepted by others. And when we look at the African perspective, it starts at this level because all of these are subsumed. When you look at the European, these things are not certain. You're not sure that you always have them, and less of this. But this is not always a given. Those physiological needs are not always a given. So it says that the culture is primarily based around scarcity and the physiological needs. That's the origin of the culture, and I'll demonstrate that for you later. When you get to Asian cultures, these are met and the safety needs are met. But environmental security is not always there because of the climate and the weather and so on. But when you look at the African diaspora, the African context starts in ancient Africa at the beginning of human civilization right here. So if we keep that in mind, then what we discover and talk about will be understood better. If you look at your paradigm, the philosophical aspects of cultural difference, we're going to be primarily examining axiology, which is this first column. All right, so let's begin with some information. Human difference comes out of an understanding of the axiology and origins of a group of people. I set out to understand the philosophical aspects of cultural difference. It's a paradigm he developed, and it looks at axiology, epistemology, and logic, and explores the basic understanding of each ethnic group. The approach enables one to examine self and others without prejudice or stereotyping. Our unconscious cultural biases and implicit biases can be explored and societal socialization process examined, ascertaining their effect upon the workplace and our living environment. The thesis that I have comes that human difference comes out of multi-generational responses to the basic human need to survive and thrive.
Dr. Nichols,
Yes?
can I show your paradigm? Can I stop showing that so the people online can see it?
Yeah, they can see that. Show them the paradigm. The reference to the ideas, we start with Johann Gottlieb Herder, and he wrote Ideen zum Philosophie der Geschichte des Menschheit, which is translated as the reflections of the philosophy of the history of mankind. Carl Gustav Jung gives me some ideas of the collective unconscious, and Thomas Lambo, a Nigerian psychiatrist, gives us an axiology between Europeans and Africans after many years of study in Great Britain. Philosophy affords us the opportunity to examine the essence of ethnic difference through the development of value sets. That's your first column, axiology. Then ways of knowing, your second major column, epistemology. And the last or third major column, logic. Competition for resources gains what is called societal acceptance. That means everyone in that society accepts that as truth or something they see as ethical. and that is called axiological ethics. The existentialistic reality to survive and thrive promulgates different acts in different cultures. In European culture, they are individualistic acts. So in European culture, we always want to know who is can't hear you, who is number one, who is the very best, who is on top. You see, those are the expressions that we use all the time. And these expressions are the conceptualization of the society of individuality. Let me give you another example. The one basketball team was the best in all the nation. That's the whole team. But our culture says we're not concerned about the whole team as much as we are concerned about the most valuable player. And the award is given to that individual. So individuality is our reality in Western culture. Now, in the African culture, it is collaborative. That says that you and I, one of the axioms in African parables is that I am because we are. My existence is contingent upon your reality. So that's I am because we are. That makes my reality. And that is, in essence, a collaborative relationship, which is very, very essential. And I'll explain many incidents in which you'll want to see that as operative. And then when you look at Asian culture, it is the collective. As their culture, they form together in collectives, or groups, if you will, or units. And the whole society in Japan, for example, sees itself as a collective. Therefore, you have different behaviors in Japan that you don't have in the rest of Asia, because they see themselves as one collective group. In China, you'll have many groups, collectives. In other parts of Asia, you'll have many groups, but Japan sees itself as one collective. So when you look at a chrysanthemum, each pebble goes right down into the main body of the flower. Some flowers don't have that kind of an arrangement, but that's what they picked as their national flower. All right, and then now we go to the Native American, and there are communal acts. And communal signifies governance. It signifies governance. Anytime you have a group of Native Americans, you'll have a tribal council or some form in which their governance is made and contained, and women are always present. There was an Iroquois chief who was invited by Benjamin Franklin, whom he had met earlier, and they had formed a friendship. And he invited him to come to, when we were trying to decide whether we were going to be give a Declaration of Independence. And he invited him to come and talk about forms of government, because in European culture, you never had the form of government that Native Americans have, particularly the Iroquois, which is, it's a federation, it's a confederation coming together. They're individuals, they're independent, but they come together as a confederation. And Benjamin Franklin was so interested in that he invited his chief, and I don't have his name handy, to come. And the first thing the man did was he looked around and he says, "Where are your women?" You see, so it's in that culture, the women are an integral part of the decision-making process. It's very important that we keep that in mind. So now we've looked at the ways in which I have come to my development of my theory. And now we're going to talk about terms. We would go now to another paper. In terms, cultural competence is at the top there, I guess. Cultural, that's an old one probably. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, down right at the bottom here, right? This the lower level. Cultural competence, see where it says terms right under there. Cultural competence is the capacity to extract from others, accept and utilize the uniqueness of their problem-solving skills is probably a better word than Weltanschauung. So let's look at that again. It says the capacity to accept from others. Now, it doesn't mean to examine. It doesn't mean to criticize. It doesn't mean to explore. It says to what? Accept from others, extract rather from others what they have to tell you. Accept it and utilize it. And that is the problem that we have, because we're not always willing to, sometimes we extract from others, but we're not willing to accept their way of knowing and utilize their way of problem solving. And so that becomes an issue. So cultural competence is the capacity to extract from others, accept and utilize the uniqueness of their Weltanschauung or problem-solving skills. In the workplace, it's the ability to know an issue from the perspective of your opponent, your staff, or your client. This capacity is the value added, which gives the enhanced market share and the competitive edge. Corporations always want to know those three things. All right, now diversity is the full utilization of all human resource potential. When we waste people, we pay for them. We waste a lot of young men. We send them to jail, and we keep them there for 20, 25 years, and there's no real growth. They don't learn anything other than other criminality, or some of them, after a while, they're too old to do anything. But when they come out, we have to put them on disability, and because they have no skills, they're 50 years old, they don't know anything, and they've developed illnesses, so we put them on disability. Now, you paid for them in jail for 25 years, you're paying for them on disabilities. Would it not have been better to have given them a proper school system in which they could have learned, and a trade? So you see, when we waste human beings, we don't give the best school systems, we don't give the best teachers, we just get by. Well, that creates problems in the society. Socialization is concepts, principles, and ideas of a society that have been reinforced to become the status quo. That says when you take an idea and you repeat it over and 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 over again, it becomes reality. Now, the principal socializer for our generation, my generation, was radio. For others, the socialization was television. And now for this generation, the socialization is your cell phone. And those instruments take an idea and repeat it over and over and over and over and over again until it becomes for us reality. So what I do is I just look at soap commercials. The United States is probably the most odorless society in the world. When you look at all the soap commercials, washing and scrubbing and washing and scrubbing and washing and scrubbing, we all smell like perfumes or flowers, because that is our socialization. Every other commercial is something that says wash, clean, scrub, scrub, scrub. Now, when you go to other countries, they don't have the same socialization. And you have a different perspective of why we scrub and clean, scrub and clean, scrub and clean. All right. Now, if I socialize you to one way of thinking, then the socialization is embedded in such a way that it becomes for us our cultural bias. And the cultural bias is the formation of ideas that are imprinted and shaped to form the self. So when you're first born, in essence, we're born without glasses. But by the time we're 3.5, our families permanently fit us with a set of lenses through which we see the world for the rest of our lives. So that no matter where you look, how you look, when you look, you're always looking through the lens of your family's cultural bias, which is then thickened by socialization. That is, it's thickened by additional layers of cultural bias that you may get from your church, your synagogue, your temple, your school. All of those are layers. Now, that says that these are very thick lenses. Thick lenses connote impaired vision, which means you're not seeing distinctly and clearly. You're seeing through a distortion of the lens. If we're going to do something with our cultural biases, we cannot extirpate the glasses from our eyes, but we must learn to look through this distortion and transcend to the correct understanding, the correctness of the situation. The best way to explain that is when people go spearfishing. You can see the fish right there, but if you try to impale it where you see it, you'll miss it. You can 1,000 times you'll keep missing. And it's only when you understand that you're looking through distortion, the distortion of the water, and you adjust to where the fish actually is, can you impale it and be successful. So that's the challenge that we have dealing with our cultural biases. We all have them. They've been imprinted, and you can transcend it, but you can't extirpate it from your eyes. So we must learn that recognizing that our cultural biases are a distortion of the reality and begin to transcend to that which is real and that which is true. Axiological ethics, that's a portion of ethics that is concerned specifically with the values, not morality or social justice. It's what is worth pursuing or promoting for that unique society. All right, now we can go to the paradigm. And I'm going to begin to work from the paradigm. The paradigm tells you that the highest value for the African culture, the axiology, the highest value lies in the relationship. So I'm going to start actually with Europeans and then come back to the others. If you look and you see on your chart, the European culture, the axiology says the highest value lies in the object or the acquisition of the object. So now let's go to what you can see. Can you see? You have to let me use this. Oh dear! Now we begin this game again. There we are. Okay. All right. We're going to start now with the idea of member to the object. That's the axiology of European culture. Now the question is, how do we arrive at that axiological dependent variable?
Share your screen, Dr. Nichols. Share your screen.
My screen. Okay. Is that good? Yeah. Okay, you're good. Okay. Member to the object. It says that the dependent variable is the object. The highest value lies in the object or the acquisition of the object. If we are going to examine European culture, we have to go back to the origin of European culture. The origin starts at the end of the last ice age in Europe. That's when European culture begins, because that's the point at which people are migrating out of Africa and go directly north into Europe, into Switzerland, and into Germany. Now, to give you an idea of what the place was at that time, the climate, if you think in terms of the border between the upper border of Minnesota and the lower border of Canada, that is the same latitude as the upper border of Switzerland and the lower border of Germany. So that gives you an idea of the place just to be into Germany, how much further north, how deeply into Canada you would be going on this continent. Now, if the highest value lies in the object or the acquisition of the object, why is that the reality? Because it indicates that without the object, and we're going to equate it to survival, which means we're going to equate it to food, then if you have sufficient food, you survive. If you don't, you die. So what was necessary for the acquisition of food? Well, in North Central Europe, 30,000 years ago, could you plant seeds and grow food in the months of September, October, November? What about December, January, February? March, April, May. In Minnesota, the ground is still what in May? It's frozen. So we are in an environment where 3, 6, 9 months you can grow absolutely nothing. And I heard something on a nature program the other night, and it said that the 3-month growing season was not assured that far north. So sometimes it would be even less than 3 months, but we're going to give it 3 months. So if you're going to plant seeds, then you have 3 months to plant And in that 3-month interval, you have to dig the ground, plant the seeds, water the seeds, harvest the seeds, the fruit, prepare it for storage, store it, and then store it for 3 months. Store it for 9 months, because you only have 3 months to acquire everything. Now, what kind of planning is necessary to take 3 months of growth, and at the end of the 3 months, you will have to wait 9 months before you can plant seeds again to grow food? Well, first of all, it has to do with personality and with your traits. This is the week to plow. And if you don't plow this week, then you plow at the beginning of A, and you go to the end of the season, 3 months, that's the end, at B. But if you elect to say, well, no, I don't feel like plowing today or tomorrow, I'll plow next week sometime, you're assuming that you can plow at A prime. And that pushes the time in which the harvest comes into being, ostensibly to B prime. But you see, in the European context, there is no B prime. If you haven't got it done by B, you're dead. That's it. So if you don't accomplish everything in the 3 months, death is the reality, because there are no second chances. There is no B prime. Now, how does that transpose itself into our modern day? Well, we have a society in which we think of scarcity, and we have deadlines. So if your boss says to you, I want the deliverable, which is the object, by the close of business today, which is the end of growing season, and you don't turn the paper in until the next morning, he says, I don't want it because you missed the what? You missed the deadline. See how powerful that is? That even today, after centuries, we are still concerned with the idea of scarcity and deadlines. Now, just recently, we had a scarcity and people hurt each other, pushing and shoving in the Walmart and other places for toilet paper. Remember that? Scarcity. So we have a whole society that its whole driving motivation is the object, the acquisition of the object, because the fear is you won't have enough. Now, when we take and look at other social issues like equal opportunity and equity and inclusion and all those things, this is historically what happened. This is the world of work. And in the world of work, with the advent of equal opportunity, people were saying, particularly African Americans, we want a piece of the pie. So we were given a piece of the pie. Now, when other ethnic groups who are different populations begin to say, we want our piece of the pie, well, ostensibly they were expecting to get their piece of the pie. The reality was they subdivided the African American piece for the Hispanics, another little piece for the Asians, another little piece for the Native Americans, rather than to expand based on their population into the pie. Now, that's what minorities did, and that was the reality of the minority population. But when women began to push for their equal rights, they said, we are more than half of the population, and we want half of the what? Yes, it terrified men to no end. And so that's one of the reasons that we still have women pushing for equal rights. That's because the fear, scarcity, that there won't be enough jobs for men. They're taking away our jobs. Well, it's not taking away your jobs, it's just sharing in the gross national product for everyone that's involved. Now, I want to go to the African context. And once again, we're going to look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Maslow said to us, physiological needs, safety needs, and love needs, or the desire to be accepted by others. All right. If the highest value lies in the relationship, that's member to member, that's the highest value. What does that say? It says that people in this culture see themselves to be equal to each other. So if we are equal to each other, and you do something that treats me as less than equal, you are treating me with what? Disrespect. And that lack of respect, that disrespect, destroys the relationship. Now, many fights, all kinds of things have happened because when we asked the young man, why would you kill a cousin, brother, best friend? Man, he dissed me, which means he disrespected me. And life itself is secondary, tertiary to being disrespected. Now, how serious is that? Well, when we go to office work, you will find that a person that has always been seen as very responsible, very reliable, Miss Smith, African-American woman, conscientious, works very hard. And she will work overtime and other things to make sure that things are in order. Her boss on the weekend was text, what people now have no barriers in terms of when is it appropriate to contact someone and not, says to him, I want the report that tomorrow to include these items and take out those. Well, Miss Smith had come in over the weekend just to make sure that everything was in order, not knowing that on Sunday night, parts of it would be taken out. Quite naturally, when her boss comes in the next morning, he's flustered. And he puts on her paper, just puts down, change these items, withdraw those, and I'm getting some material, and we're going to get the report out right away. Well, now, what has he done culturally that is going to make the day go wrong from that point on? What culturally is going to make it go wrong? Did he establish a relationship? Or did he just come in and give orders? This is very, very important, and I'm going to share with you. This is a report. It's too much, you can't see it, but it's a report that's put out by the National Academy of Sciences. And it talks about the escalation of police interaction with Black men. What causes that escalation where it goes into handcuff and throwing you on the ground, all these things, after a police stop? This is one of the most thorough research papers I've ever seen. It's not missing anything. They tell you very clearly that very few we find that stops with escalated outcomes derive from stops without outcomes and their which arrest and handcuffs and so forth, and that all that happens within the first 45 words spoken by the police officer. First 45 words. So if he comes up to the car and says, give me your license, give me your title, has he established a relationship? He said, hello, I'm Officer Green. I would like to see your license and your title to car. And the first thing that comes up is, well, why did you stop me? Well, to prevent that from escalating, he can say, hello, I'm Officer Green. You drove through the traffic light, or your tail light is out. May I see? This is again, may I? to your license and title to your car. Now, when that little bit happens in that first 45 words, the possibility of an escalation into handcuffing and beating and all the other things goes down to almost nothing. Now, that's how powerful the concept is of establishing a relationship. Now, that is so important because all of these other needs that we talk about in terms of Maslow are met by the society, met by the place in which you live. If you live in equatorial Africa, can you ever fear freezing to death? If you ever live in equatorial Africa, can you ever envision that there is no food to eat? So if there's no food, no shelter, then scarcity is your reality. And you have to stay focused on those first physiological needs of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. But if you are living in a place where food is omnipresent, where there's heat, you never have to worry about freezing to death. And if you need a shelter, you can take palm leaves and arrange them in such a way, like a thatched roof, to keep the sun off of you and the rain off of you. Now, that gives us, and in terms of security, in those compounds, the only thing that you could fear, because the lions are out in Savannah and other places, the only thing you would fear would be a snake. Okay? So my question is, there's a snake crawling, and it's going to bite your child and kill her. Either the snake is dead or your child is dead. Which one is dead? Well, the culture knows how to kill the snake. So safety needs, physiological needs are met just where you live in Africa. So if the desire to be accepted by others is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and that's what the reality is of this member-to-member relationship, then esteem needs, that is to satisfaction with one's own work and respect from others. That's the next of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Now, if you take that reality and look at European culture, where people are on that first, some maybe even to the second level, but primarily to the first level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, to have enough food, enough water, enough shelter, and warmth to stay alive. If your culture is based there primarily for centuries, and it is now a part of your genetic makeup, then you practice those behaviors. Toilet paper in the 21st century. Now, if you are in a different African culture where women are seen as equal to men, okay, and they are moving past love now for the needs for esteem, satisfaction with one's own work and respect from others, what do you commonly hear about African American women in the workplace? What are some of the negative things that you hear? They are pushy, they are this, they are that. And sometimes they tell you they're not in their place, which will just get you nowhere at all. But you see, the starting point between the expectation of where European women are in relationship to where African American women are in Maslow's hierarchy of needs is appreciably different. So this Black woman going into a position goes in with a completely different self-image than her white counterpart. And that's some of the issues that we get. The very negative comments about Black women in the workplace. So now let's begin to look and look now at Asian culture. Because I want you to begin to see Asian culture. Now I need to go back to where they can see my hands, okay? The Asian culture, the highest value is in the cohesiveness of the group.
You need to share your screen.
I have to share, okay. Sorry. If the highest value is in the cohesiveness of the group, then what do we want to understand? We want to understand how groupness becomes the highest value. Well, all people come out of Africa because of the Ice Age. You couldn't enter into Europe, so you made a turn into Asia Minor, and then you begin the long trek across Asia. So we go Iran, Iraq, Persia, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India. Some people leave the trail and go to India. The vast Mongolian desert. Then people form the Middle Kingdom. Others go out the Korean Peninsula. And the end is the Japanese home islands. And this is the migratory trek to Asia. This takes literally thousands of years. Thousands of years, because you're going to spend almost a half of century just trying to cross this Mongolian desert and to get to a place where you can begin to have agriculture, the things that you need on a sustained basis. As you are moving from point A to point B, can you be assured that when you get here, you'll find everything that you need? No. So it says that when people get to point B, did you bring the grain? Well, no, I thought you did. Did you bring the 10 poles? Well, I bought 2 of them. Well, we need 12. Well, I thought somebody else would get the others. Now, those kinds of behaviors, are they going to keep a group cohesive? No, because we don't know who has the responsibility for what tasks. So in order to understand that, the Asian culture used their metaphysical symbolism of the yin and the yang, male and female forces, again, in balance and harmony. Is the yin greater than the yang? Is the yang greater than the yin? No, they're in balance and harmony with each other. And that keeps the group cohesive. So what you have in this culture historically is there are assigned tasks for women and assigned tasks for men. And if men do their task and women do their task, then with that balance and harmony, the group stays cohesive and it survives. That's the survival of the group. Now, when we look with Western eyes, we don't see this as an equity between forces or work. We envision one thing that we see as, well, the men should help do that or what have you. But in their culture, here's something very interesting. When you want to look to see what is the function of maleness, well, when you write the word male in traditional Chinese, you have, sometimes it's written this way. Now, this word is like a rice field. And this is, it's like the kicking of a horse. You see this hip in the kicking? So this connotes work, all right? Or power or strength. So the strength of the male lies out in the field where he works and earns, in essence, the money. Then in this culture, he has fulfilled his obligation. Having fulfilled his obligation, then who has the responsibility for maintaining the wealth of the family? Now, how can we see something where this was the reality in our modern times? Well, it's not so modern now, but when the Vietnam War ended, and if you were not on that helicopter leaving the country, then how did you get out? Well, you had to, now the currency was worthless. It was like Confederate money. That's what the men had. But who had wealth? The women had wealth in their jewelry, diamonds, and that was sort of like an invested wealth. So if you look at the jewelry, like women from India or other places, it's not 14 karat anything. It's 100% gold. They don't have but one or two pieces, but it's pure. Same with diamonds. Now, the point that I'm making is, in order to get out, you have to pay the boatman. And the only wealth that was there was what the woman had. And they took their wealth and paid so their families could get across a certain river into a camp and wait their turn to immigrate to the United States. That's a recent time. That's a recent time that you can see that. But that historically is the reality of the Asian culture. Now, we need to understand more about the Asian culture because if you look on your philosophical aspects of cultural difference, it talks about the highest value lying in the cohesiveness the highest value lies in the object or the acquisition of the object. And it says the highest value, when we talk about group cohesiveness, we need to understand how they come to that reality. So, if you're going to write the Chinese word for group, now, this is dyslexic Chinese because I'm dyslexic, okay? So you see dyslexic Chinese is because I'm dyslexic. That's it. All right. This word is like monarch or king, and this word is sheep. So in order for you to have a group, you have a leader and followers. But we must not look just at the primary, secondary, or even tertiary level of understanding or the concept of sheep. When we go into the etymology of the word, we'll find that it also means conformity. So conformity, monarchy is always a hierarchical system, so conformity within the hierarchy keeps the group cohesive. Now, when you have 10, 12, 15 people in a group, how do you make a decision? Because in Western culture, we say, all in favor say aye, all opposed say aye. All right, now, you have 9 people. 4 said, the report is not, we can't get it finished possibly before Tuesday. Another group says, it can be due tomorrow. No, Monday or Tuesday at the latest. No, tomorrow at noon. Well, now that's 4-4. In Western culture, only one person can change it. So this person says, noon tomorrow. These people didn't want it till noon. They wanted it until Tuesday or Monday. No, majority rules. So then what kind of behavior do you get? Well, 3 out of the 4 plus the other 5 turn it in. But you have one person who didn't turn it in. They're walking down the hall and you say, Tom, where's your report? Tom says, oh, I completely forgot. That's called passive-aggressive behavior. I didn't want to do it in the first place, but I forgot it. So you see, that's not going to keep an Asian group together. Now we have to go back to the paper and see, how do you form a way in which everyone agrees? And in that way, does it come from me or from you?
Share your screen again.
All right, there we go. All right. Now what you have to do then is you have to come to a consensus. And this is the way consensus is written in traditional Chinese. the etymology of the words. If you look at the word at the top, if you look at this word, and we take a portion of it, this is the Chinese word for voice, and the word beneath it is heart. So in order to come to a consensus, your voice and your heart, your affect and your intellect have to say the what? The same thing. Now, how many times have you said something with your voice you didn't mean with your heart? Are you going to help me with the program? Call me. Are you going to help pass out the papers or come to the program? I'll try as hard as I possibly can to get there. These are all things that are said with what? The voice, but not meant with the heart. And in this culture, you can't allow yourselves that privilege. Everyone has to say with their voice and their heart. And interestingly enough, when you write voice and heart together as the same Chinese word, this is the Chinese word for intent. So if I know how you think and feel, I know your intent. Once we all have the same intent, we're willing to work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day to produce 1,500 widgets, then we can go to the last part of the calligraphy, and we are in a position to come together. That's unity or come together. And we speak through one mouth. Now we have a consensus, and we can act as conformists within the hierarchy and keep the group cohesive. Now let's understand something else about that culture, the Asian culture. Right now, when we give standardized tests throughout the country, what ethnic group scores highest on these tests? I need a little water here. I think we'll all agree that Asians score highest. Now, why is that? Is that because all Asian mothers are tiger mothers and beat their children into submission? No. It's because epistemologically, that is how they know knowledge. In order to know something, in order to know one of these Chinese characters, you have to be able to see the whole character configuration and the position of each stroke simultaneously. There are no phonics, no ch, p, f up here. You can't break this down into syllables. It doesn't work that way. You've got to see the configuration of the whole and the position of each stroke, and it has to be done simultaneously. You can't go ch, da. It doesn't work. So now, with that understanding, wholes and parts seen simultaneously, let's examine to see what happens in a classroom. All right, you get a test. There were 19 questions asked, and you got 17 right. How would you feel? 17 over 19? But if I'm your Chinese father, I ask you, where are the other two? Now, you see, because we don't know the culture, we think, oh, you see, not satisfied with 17 over 19, they're just making the child neurotic, they're pushing about. No, that has nothing to do with it. Without the other two, you have nothing. Remember, I told you you have to have it all or nothing. So let's go through this now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. And where are the other two strokes? So if you don't have them, you can't guess. There's no way for you to know what is not there. So the grandfather says, where are the other two? Because without them, you have nothing. You have to absolutely, I've done this before where I have Chinese in the audience, and I just put these two dots and leave this out. And they have no clue about what it is until I put the other part in there. So you see, you're dealing in cultures that are different. We have a different essence. And the essence of ethnic difference is very important. Now, let's talk about an essence. What is an essence and how does it work? Well, we intuit an essence. I guess I can come back now to the main screen. Okay, we intuit an essence. Now, intuit is the verb, intuition is the noun. So from our intuition, we intuit an essence, which means this is things that come to us without thought or evaluation or cognitive thinking. It just occurs. That's the way essences are formed and deal and work. Okay? So let me see if I have here. What am I looking for? Okay. Here's what Plato tells us about essence. About intuition. Plato tells us that the intuition is the ability to understand something immediately without the need for conscious reasoning. That's what Plato tells us. And that's very important to understand. How can I demonstrate an essence? Well, we play a little game. Play it in your mind with me as we go along. I want you to we have 3 steps. First step, you close your eyes. Second step, you envision the noun that I'm going to give you. Third step, you open your eyes and we discuss it. All right, number 1, close your eyes. And if you're peeping, you're paranoid and we have treatment. Step 2, envision a chair, perhaps even your most favorite chair. Step 3, open your eyes. Now, had we taken photographs of what each person had seen, each of those pictures would be what from each other? Different. Okay? Yet, if we piled all of those pictures together and gave that huge pile of pictures to each person would look at the picture and say, it is a what? A chair. With that much variation and difference, how is that possible? Because we understand the very essence of chairness, and we would not confuse it with the essence of something else, like the essence of this cup. It has no handle, but it's still a cup. Okay? Now, what is very important about essence is that there's an essence of ethnic difference. We are different from our very essence, ethnically speaking. And because you are able to identify each picture as an essence of chairness, you would never confuse it with the essence of a table. Even if I were to sit on the table, would you be confused by my behavior, sitting on the table? No, because the essence of the table remains table essence. So this is very important that we begin to think in terms of what is that essence that makes us ethnically different. And that is our axiology. Member to member, member to object, member to the group. Those are the very essences of our difference. And with those essence of ethnic difference, once we understand it, we're able to operate and function together cohesively. Now, why is that important? Right there where you are in Michigan, there's a famous professor. He's very modest. His name is Scott Page. He wrote a book many years ago called The Difference. And in this book, he tells you that there are 2 teams. There's the traditional team to solve a problem of all white males. That's a homogeneous team. He said, but when he compared that team, homogeneous, all white males, to heterogeneous, men, women, different ethnic groups, and so on another team, it took them longer to get started, but once they got started, they were more creative and more productive than their traditional team. Now, what is the meaning of that? The meaning is that if we utilize all the human resources that we have, all the ethnic groups, males and females, and pull them together into groups, and the groups function as a whole, we will be more creative and more productive. Why is that necessary? Because we are now in a globalized society. And the globalized society says the money will go where they can get the most money back from what they invest. Now, we're all upset because a lot of the money went overseas. We had what is called the Rust Belt. Those steel mills closed. We weren't willing to build new steel mills. Japan built steel mills and made steel. Finally, they realized that the steel market was going to be out because other countries like Korea made it cheaper and faster. So rather than to hang on to that idea, as the people got older that had worked in the steel mill, they narrowed steel down and its production to where Japan only produces steel for surgical instruments. And the people that worked in steel and can look at the fiery furnace to know when to pour and when it's not ready to pour, they sit now at a desk, old men, and look through a screen at these very small containers when to pour the steel, because they're trained to know when to pour it. And they make the best surgical steel in the world. But now the industry has gone out. That industry is gone, and they're looking for another one, because they're not trying to compete with other countries on the same thing. When our industries left, and then there was another purge of all the industries leaving again, because you could send your tool and die to another country. They could produce the product more cheaply, faster, and ship it here and sell it here for less than what it cost you to manufacture here. And so we had a great exodus of industries going overseas. And we're hoping that they'll come back, but they're not coming back because the cost of trying to do them is too expensive. We have to now think in terms of what can we do that is new and build our economy on the new. And of course, that's going to be sun and wind and solar systems. That's the newest industry. That's the most productive industry. To try to go back to producing coal and oil and things like that won't prepare us for the 21st century. And we have to be mindful that the Chinese are very, very positive about what they're doing in the 21st century. In our Congress, for the last 10 or 15 years, we always pass a continuing resolution for the budget. Continuing resolution. If I'm a department head in the government, I don't know how much money I'm going to get this year. Will it be less? What will it be? Because I haven't received my budget. That is, when the calendar year changes at the end of August, the beginning of September, historically, I have to wait till June before they say, here's your lump of money. Now, what kind of program can I build June, July, August? And if I don't spend all the money, they won't give me that much money next time. So I've got to write quick contracts. Say, hello, Ed, hello, Jim, hello, Pat. Listen, you want a contract? Here's a contract. Do it in order to get the money out. Now, what kind of development is that? What did the Premier of China just say in the last Communist Congress? He said, we have our plans for 2050. I mean, 2350. We're now 2020, what are we, 2020? Yeah, well, we're 23. Yes, 2350. They've already got it planned out. How much it's going to cost, how long it's going to take, and they do it. So what is Nichols saying to you? I'm saying that if we don't begin to understand the essence of ethnic difference and pull together in a heterogeneous team with great creativity and great productivity, we will be a second or third class world power. Okay? Now, can we go to the slides and go through the ones on axiology and begin to look at is someone sitting at the organ? It looks like someone sitting at the organ. All right. All right, let's go to the next slide. Cultural competence and leadership. All right, axiology is the study of values. Epistemology asks, how do you know? Not what you know, but how. Logic asks, how do you reason to an answer? What is cultural competence? It is the capacity to accept from others, extract and utilize the uniqueness of their worldview, the Weltanschauung, or their problem-solving skills. So when we go back to your professor, right, at your university there, University of Michigan, Scott Page, he tells us that heterosexual groups are more productive and more creative. And that's what cultural competence is. To extract from your coworkers, to accept and utilize the uniqueness of their problem-solving skills. In the workplace, this is the ability to know an issue from the perspective of your staff, your client, or even your what? Your opponent. Next slide. We talked about essence, and I gave you the way to look at it. We intuit the essence of chairness, and we would never confuse it with the essence of table. Even if I were to sit on the table, you would not be deceived by my behavior, because the essence of the table has not what? Changed by my sitting on it. Doesn't make it a chair. All right, next slide. Okay, ethnic groups. The ethnic groups that came to the United States were coming from Europe, Africa, Asia. Native Americans were already here. Okay. Now you have people who share an ethnic worldview. They, in and of themselves, are not an ethnic group, but as a collective, they share an ethnic worldview. So Latinx and Afro-Arabs share an ethnic worldview. In the situation, what makes those three factors possible? Well, one is a catastrophic event experienced by your forebears. So with Spain, it's with Latinx, it's your experience, your forebears' experience with colonial Spain. They were forced to speak Spanish exclusively and forced to convert to Catholicism. Now, if your forebears were subjected to colonial Spain, forced to speak Spanish, forced to convert to Catholicism, you then share an ethnic worldview which is defined as Latinx. Because ethnically, you can be white, you can be Black Latin, you can be Asian Latin, you can be any number of ethnic groups, but what you share in common is your shared ethnic worldview. Now, with Muslims, they were subjected to the Islamic wars of conversion. They spoke Arabic exclusively, and they converted to Islam. Now, when people don't have all three, even though they're in what we call Arab countries, you can see that they don't identify themselves as Arabs. You have the Kurds, the Assyrians. They don't identify themselves as Arabs. Now, they were subjected to the Islamic wars, and they convert to Islam, but they don't speak Arabic. They speak Kurdish, is their mother language. You see what I'm saying? That's how we make these distinctions. All right, next group, next slide. The axiology of Europe. The highest value lies in the object, or the acquisition of the object. When do we begin to have a European culture and society? At the end of the last ice age in Europe. Crop season was limited to 3 months. Time is linear and sequential. You begin at A and you finish at B. There is no B prime because it doesn't exist. If you come talking about, I'll do it tomorrow, thinking that you'll, at the close of B, you're going to have a little extra time, you're dead. That's the end of it. If you don't get it done between A and B, you're what? Dead. Let's repeat it again. If you don't get it between A and B, you're what? Dead. Other cultures have a B prime. Okay? All right. Now, the concept of sharing in Western culture does not come until Christianity. You have to ask yourself, why would I share? Well, Nichols, you have 12 baskets and you only need 9. And I say to myself, well, I need 9 if you can plow. But if the plowing is 1 month late, I need 10. And I may have to have more because we have more people eating. So what sense would it make to share? Doesn't make sense. It's only with the advent of Christianity that people begin to somewhat understand the idea of sharing. Now, how are people referred to? We are something that is counted and measured. We're not, in other words, if I'm doing a report on an industry and I'm saying how many people are necessary to do the job, I don't say that. I say how many units of production do we need for the task. You see how we're making the human an object that can be counted and measured. Let's go to the next slide. Now, the European woman could not be going through the fields chasing after trying to kill an animal, like a buffalo or something, because in pregnancy, she's just not physiologically able to do that. So they return to the place of residence, and she begins to understand roots, herbs, barks, grasses, roots, and leaves. Now, why is that? There's a bush near, and all the pregnant animals go to that bush, nibble the bush, dilate, and deliver. She is in labor. What is she likely to do? Nibble those same leaves, because they know something that she doesn't know that she's finding out, and she records that. And as she looks at other roots and barks and teas and so on, women in Europe developed a pharmacopoeia. Now, men don't have very much of this knowledge because they're constantly on the hunt. If you go all the way back several years in the border between Italy and Austria, they had what they call the Iceman. As he thawed out, they saw a little pouch with roots, herbs, barks, grasses, roots, and leaves for him to use as medicinal purposes. Women also learned that dillweed will preserve food. You can drink it as a tea and it'll settle your stomach. But if you put it with dill pickles and even just water and a little salt, you'll have dill pickles. It'll preserve food. So they begin to understand what, from their pharmacopoeia of roots, herbs, barks, grasses, and roots and leaves, could be used for the preservation of food. Developed a whole science of that. Now, who learned in the world, not just in Europe, to count and measure before men? Before as men, we could even grasp the concepts. Women. One, because of their menses. So if it's going to take, we have only a 3-month growing season, who can tell you how long 3 months is? Okay? And if we're going to have to wait 9 months before we can even think about getting some more food, well, gestation is 9 months. So you see, the women had physiological understandings of counting and measuring and the sequence of time centuries before men. Now, because women had so much knowledge in the European experience, that means they had the object of highest value. Now, go to the next slide. What was the response of the European men when women had the power, because knowledge equals power? They developed a hierarchical system in which women were what to their husbands? Subordinate. Actually, women were the what of their husbands. They were the property of their husbands. And the wife's dowry, as soon as she married, became the husband's what? Property. Now, women all over the world have known how to get pregnant or not get pregnant. In modern times, we lost it because in Europe, the people that could give you that information were called Kronen. And they had little secret gatherings of Kronen and the other women. And those women could tell you what herbs or roots were necessary, or in this country, people tell you little quinine will abort you. Okay, well, how much, how, I don't know all that. But that's the common knowledge in this country. But as soon as those Kronen societies were discovered, men went in and destroyed them. Now, if you want to produce male children, remember, Jews wandered for 40 years. And after they got to the Promised Land, they were fighting almost every other year. And people would come and kill off large numbers of males in the military. So if you want your society to have more men, then you must understand something that comes out of ancient Egypt which was what is now in modern Judaism the mikveh. But if you look at the mikveh and its structure, it places women at the time of ovulation in the bed with their husband, because they've been out of the bed because they were unclean. And that period of time moves you right into ovulation, the night of ovulation. If your husband has been free of any dispensation of his sperm, no masturbation, no nothing, the first ejaculation of sperm is high in Y chromosome. When the egg first comes out, is first released and comes out, and it's ready to be fertilized, that first 6 to 8 hours, it will receive male sperm for the male child. After that, it shuts down, cysts over, and you could only get female children. So now this is what they learned in Egypt, and they carried it forward. Because you don't hear about a mikvah or the cleanliness until you hear Moses. And Jews lived for centuries before Moses went to Egypt. So that knowledge comes to us out of the Egyptian thinking. Now, in Egypt, in English common law, the wife can be physically disciplined by her husband. Okay? And this little tidbit is very interesting. When God asks Adam, you ate the apple. He says to God, the woman you gave me the apple to eat. When you go to other cultures with the same theological myth origin, you will have a different answer. The women you gave me told me to eat the apple. And so whose fault is it? All right, let's go to the next slide. Did you skip one? Okay, no, go ahead, sorry. Okay, the next one. All right, the highest value lies in the relationship between persons, the origin of African civilization. These are all places where you see that men and women are socialized as equals. And now, unlike time being linear and sequential in the European set, time in this setting is spiral. So it goes around like a spiral. That's the way the universe, that's the universe functions in that reality of spiralness, okay? Now, in vernacular, to understand this idea of spiral, in Black English, we say what goes around comes around. In the Hispanic culture, when are you going to do it? Oh, mañana. You see, again, all right? And in the Arab, inshallah, if it's God's will, it'll get done. Okay, this is the concept of the spiralness in time, which is astronomical. That's how the astronomical situation works. Now, in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we've talked about where this culture starts at a very high point over others. And when you go to East Africa and you ask in the biblical scriptures there, when God asks, who ate the apple? Adam and Eve say, we ate the apple. Isn't that interesting? All right, next slide. All right, member to member. If the highest value lies in the relationship, then we want to see that time is spiral. That's astronomic, all right? What goes around comes, I gave you those. Then, what's an example of an understanding of the solar system in such a way that we know that on a spiral it will be there at a certain date? Well, you have the Dogon in Mali, and you have the white dwarf star that only comes out around every 60 years. And their life expectancy is 25, 30 at the highest, so that's at least 2 generations before you would know the next one's coming around. The scientists that went there from Europe, Germany, and so on, with their high-powered telescopes, said it doesn't exist. They said, well, it does. It'll be back here in 5 years. Now, when it reappeared, they were so angry because how on earth in this little mud, dirty, filthy place of Dogon, Mali, do you know when it's going to come out? And we didn't know it. That's what kind of issues. Now, in the Inca, with the Inca, the Mayas, and the Aztecs, they have temples all over where you have a small window, and as the seasons change and the stars come in different angles, star will shine right through, lighting up the whole temple. They have some stairways where it's like you can see the animals going down the stairs, and in the spring you can see the animals going up the stairs. It's all kinds of things because they have a true understanding. Now, the one that gets away with me most is Ramses II, and the sunlight illuminates on his face, on his birthday, and his coronation. Now, you got to understand, where is his face? It's a statue. But you have the outer temple with a face. You have another temple, smaller space. Then you have another temple, even smaller space. And way at the end of the last temple, the sun has got to come all the way through there on February 21st and light up his whole statue. And it comes on October 21st, on the day of his coronation, and lights it up. Through all those different spaces, it's phenomenal. You check those out and you'll see it. Next slide. All right, axiology of Asian, highest values in the cohesiveness of the group. We have the migratory trek that we talked about, who has the responsibility for the task. That was the division of labor through the yin and yang, and conformity in hierarchy. And I showed you the two figures in Chinese, the figure for king or monarch, and the other figure for sheep, conformist animals. And then the cohesiveness of the group was unity, one mouth, and intent, voice, heart. You have written documents in China going back 1,600 years before BC. So that gives you an idea how old cultures, if they're already writing at that level, a written history, how much longer have they been in the place before they even developed writing as a skill? These are the things right here I showed you. All right, let's have the next slide. Time is circular. Time begins and ends at the same point. Now, how to explain that? I generally do it with a coin. Let us assume that I have a coin here. This is the coin. This is heads. This is tails. All right, this is heads. This is tails. Heads. At what point the coin does heads cease to be heads and become tails? And at what point does tails cease to be tails and become heads? Time begins and ends at the same point. Now, if you turn it this way, and people talk about reincarnation and what have you, so from death, from your incarnation into birth, and then death, and then you transit back down, and so life and death are simply the other side of the same coin. Time begins and ends at the same point. Next slide. Native American culture. Seasonal migration is the way to maintain the ecological balance. So if the highest value is oneness with the Great Spirit, then you want to do things that keep you in constant contact and touch with the Great Spirit. So you have seasonal migration. That is, in Western culture, if I have a river that comes together, two rivers that come together, and this is all very rich soil, I have farms here or little towns here, what have you, others will come in and settle. And in a little while, we'll get into a dispute about who owns what. And in a period longer, we'll exhaust all of the resources of this area. Now, what does native culture do? Since the land doesn't belong to any person, it belongs to Mother Earth, grants us privilege to use the land. It doesn't belong, you can't buy it or sell it. It doesn't belong to you. It's for all of us. So now in Western culture, well, we would fight against one side, drive you out and what have you. No. In Native culture, we know that we are going to exhaust the resources of this space. It is now time for us to do what? Move on and start in another place and be mindful of not destroying the whole area, destroy the land. And with seasonal migration, the Great Spirit tells you where the buffalo are going to be, where is the best place to settle, where the snow is going to be too bad over the winter. All that guidance comes to you through the Great Spirit. And communal acts, people, now you see, remember I talked about the different acts that people do. Well, communal acts say that we are conscious of ourself and others, but always the consciousness is with self and the Great Spirit. And time begins when we get together. That's something that's somewhat difficult for Westerners to understand. We look at the watch to measure time. In some ethnic groups in Native culture, time begins when we come together, or how we spend time together for the first moon, or we spent one moon together. That's how we think about time. Not 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And you see, if you're from the Bureau of Indian Affairs and you come way out someplace in some Indian reservation to talk about something very important like storing materials that are, hazardous materials, but since your reservation is on land that has deep layers of clay, we could just dig out some of the clay and place these little things here. And we have to negotiate with you. Well, if you are in tune with the Great Spirit, then you don't want to be mishandled by the people who are coming out telling you all the wonderful things they're going to do for you. So you need to have clarity between yourself and the Great Spirit, and that comes with purification. You just had a purification ceremony there earlier. And that is to cleanse you, and bring you closer to an understanding with the Great Spirit. Now, if you go into a sweat lodge to be purified, and you say, Great Spirits, I'm scheduled for a meeting at 8 o'clock with the Bureau of Indian Affairs. Let's get it on, let's get started and get it done right away. Well, that doesn't make sense, because you have to go in and really understand the value of the Great Spirit. On your paper, the philosophical aspects of cultural difference, when you look at that, you have online something that will direct you to YouTube. And I ask you to please look at that, because that's the best example of oneness with the Great Spirit. Because this is the funeral of a man that is many, many generations, 50-something generations of medicine men or spiritual men for his community. And he dies. And as you can see from that, pictures that were taken, because it was a double rainbow, the whole ceremony is there with when you open the gates and so on, the spirit goes, and all these different things that are part of the culture. It's being explained to you as you see it. And it's very important, because you don't see a double rainbow that often. So people are taking pictures of the double rainbow. But as they take pictures of the double rainbow, there it is in blue right there. That's what you want to press and look at that. When you look at the double rainbow and everyone then begin to share pictures from their cell phones, they begin to see a little white dot. And it kept going up and up and up. Now, you can tell me what you see or what you see. But as far as I'm concerned, that was a perfect graphic, something I could see with my eyes, of oneness with the Great Spirit. Very powerful, very, very powerful. Go play it and think, wow, we never thought of things that way. Tribal governance we talked about, and the medicine wheel. These are sets in which things are four. These are generally in sets of four. There's the directions like north, east, south, west, okay? And they're the seasons, spring, summer, fall, winter. So the culture thinks in sets of 4 and 3. So in terms of the animal world, there are those that travel on 2, those things that travel on 4, those that travel with wings and feathers, those that travel with flippers and fins. That's my set of what? 4. Now I need a set of 3. Those that travel under the earth, on the earth, and above the earth. That's my set of 4. So that is the completeness. 7 is complete. Sets of 4 and sets of 3 are the completeness, the wholeness of reality. All right, thank you. Let's go to the next. All right, now, do you want to start epistemology now, or do you want to take a break and take some of the questions that we might have, or have Q&A, or what would you like to do? Dr. Coleman.
So we have about 15 more minutes total. It's almost 7:30.
All right, let's take the 15 minutes and go through the rest of the paradigm, okay? Is that okay, or do you want to ask whatever you want to do? I'm ready. What would you like to do? Oh, you want to go? All right, all right. European epistemology. Now, epistemology asks, how do you know something? Not knowledge, but how do you go about knowing something? In Western culture, counting and measuring is the important way of knowing. That's the, you see, these things are divided in terms, epistemology is divided into applied, pedagogy, and methodology. So the applied, which means how does the culture know? Well, if the object is the highest value, how do you know it? You know it through counting and measuring. Now, what we say is if you cannot count it and measure it, it is not scientific. You see how we elevate something to one standard saying that's the only way that you can know through counting and measuring the object. And it has to be repeatable and reproducible, which is the scientific method. Other cultures know differently. All right, let's do the pedagogy. Very often in Western culture, we go back to the ancient Greeks. So, parts to the whole. Democritus said, was an animist of the philosophers at that time. He was an animist, saying that there are small particles that are in the void of the ether, and by Zustand, well, I studied in German, by accident, one will hit the other, and the whole thing configuration will change. So he was an atomist, and by saying that things are small atoms to begin with, when our physics got past the Greeks and all the rest in Europe to where we had physics that we could actually ascertain a small substance, small particle or something, we named it atoms. And it comes from Democritus or Democritus, depending on where you went to school. Now, methodology is linear and sequential. So you want to make an object, that's the end of it here. You count out parts, 2 bolts, 3 screws, a fender, what have you, and you move it linearly and sequentially. That becomes the assembly line, and Henry Ford made us a rich nation and made the automobile by the money he paid people. It was enough that everyone could afford a Model T. So counting and measuring, the pedagogy parts to the whole, the methodology linear and sequential, is the European epistemology. Let's go now to the next. African epistemology is symbolic imagery and rhythm. Now, symbolic imagery are proverbs and parables, okay? And rhythm is flow, not clapping your hands, but biorhythms. Okay? Each organ of the body has its own rhythm, and we didn't know that at the National Institutes of Health. We were trying to bombard and treat different parts of the body, and we was rejected all the time until we realized that there were cycles that each organ had. And once you recognize the cycle, then you could do the treatment. All right, now, here's the issue. If I know something, now let's examine the idea of symbolic imagery. It is to look through and beyond the surface content and knowing the meaning, like proverbs and parables, paintings, sculpture, music. That is to look beyond the surface and see the deeper meaning. It's like poetry. Rhythm is not just clapping your hands, but it's a pattern of sequences. And it is a predictable thing that goes on. All right? But now, the thinking is holistic, which is what is the big picture. And the methodology is cut to the chase, which is critical path analysis. So symbolic imagery and rhythm, holistic thinking, and critical path analysis. Now, because other groups are subordinate to the European scientific method, quote unquote, I cannot just tell you this is my way of knowing. That's what I hope to do in the 21st century, and you will accept it. I have to spend time to transliterate from my way of knowing to your way of knowing so that you will accept what I say. So how can I tell you about symbolic imagery and rhythm? It took me a long time, but finally I got it. I said, okay, if you take a stethoscope, you listen to the rhythm of the heart. If the heart is out of rhythm, it is not functioning properly. Symbolic imagery, EKG, little squiggles on a piece of paper, and they will tell you through their pattern, through their symbolic imagery, whether the heart is functioning properly or not. So what you have is you have people who look at proverbs and parables and the flow of things. How do things function? And they want the big picture, and then they'll use critical path analysis. So let me take the time now to put it back on me rather than on the rest of epistemology. I want to do this. All right, I'm going to place you in a classroom. I am the dominant teachers in elementary school, white woman, 28 to 30, somewhere along in there. I'm teaching the third grade, right? In teaching the third grade, I have little boys who are now 8 years of age. I say, good morning, boys and girls. We are going to start our new unit for today. Right? Our new unit is the object for the week. I'm going to give you a series of exercises, exercise A, B, C, and D. Those are parts that will become the whole by the end of the week. And that's when I give the test. And in each exercise, exercise A, there will be parts that you can count and measure, which are exercises. If you do the exercises in part A, then you do the exercise part E in part C. All right, the class is given the information. On Monday, count and measure. Tuesday, count and measure. Wednesday, and Leroy, little black 8-year-old, stands and says, I don't understand. Now, what he is not understanding is he's expecting to get the big what? Picture. And she's breaking things down to little parts. When she gives a part, he assumes that that is a what? A whole. And he can't get it all together. Now, 2/3 of the way into the semester, he comes to the realization that all of these are just parts that make the whole. Now, once he has that configuration in his head, he's doing the homework. I mean, he just gets everything first hand. The teacher even stands over him and watches as he does tests. He gets the right answer, but she doesn't know how he does it. So she says, Leroy got perfect answers 2 weeks in a row. Leroy, how did you get perfect answers 2 weeks in a row? Class, how do you think he got 2 weeks that got it correct? And he hasn't had anything correct all semester. They said he what? He was cheating. Now, go back to the highest value of the relationship. What is she accusing him in front of all of his colleagues, all of his little buddies? She's accusing him of cheating. He said, I ain't cheat. She says, don't lie. So she cheated him with what? If you didn't cheat, then tell me how you did it. Well, at 13 years of age, you can't say that I use critical path analysis because you don't know it, but that's how you did it. You can't explain it to me. I just did it. Now, what she does is she continues to berate him, and that means that the relationship is completely what? Destroyed. How is he going to act for the rest of the semester? He will act out in the class to a degree that when he goes to the next semester, he doesn't pass to the next class. He's placed in what class? Special what? Special education. If you go to Jackson Prison, that's not very far from where you are, and you give a complete psychological battery to the majority or any number of black men there that were in special ed, you'll find that they never should have been in special ed because they have no deficits in learning. It's just that people did not understand that they had a different epistemological model, which they could not at 8 years explain. 8 years old, third grade, that's the beginning of the track from school to prison. So we must begin to think in terms of teachers that are sensitive and aware that children have different epistemological models for problem solving. Thank you, Dr. Pat.
Really is of you, Doc. Oops.
I can't hear you.
Okay, that's because. Can you
hear me now?
Yes, I can.
All right, so the question, we'll just have to deal with the echo,
Okay.
is how do people of European descent react to their portion of your chart and the historical context behind it? So my question was the person who asked this of European descent? Because we can ask some European descent folk that question, right?
Okay. Well, let the idea of starting from origin, okay? I'm not the first person that thought about it. Let me just share something with you here. All right? This is from Johann Gottfried Herder, a German psychologist, a German philosopher. And he says in his books, Ideen zur Philosophie der Geschichte der Menschheit, which translates literally as the reflections of the philosophical history of mankind. And he talks about the origins of different ethnic groups based on where they lived and what their experiences were at that time. So I'm not the first person to come up with it. This is a classical German philosopher of the 17th century. So it's not a new idea. It's just that I've developed it to a greater degree of sophistication. More practicalization, that's what I've done. I made it more applicable, more practical, and moving it from the abstract to the
So I'm going to ask in the audience, did anyone see themselves in any of those different perspectives? So, for example, of course, I see myself as an African American on the member to member, because if you meet me, the first thing I'm going to do is to create a relationship. I'm going to ask you, how's mom? I mean, I cannot even begin to work with you until I reach you on that level. So that's how I relate to this. Does anyone else have any examples of how they see themselves in this chart? Anybody want to share? Did you see yourself? Raise your hand if you saw yourself in anything that was described. So I'm going to put myself on mute for a minute and repeat that. Did any of you see yourselves in the description of the axiology, whether objects were important, or any of the symbolic imagery? Did any of you, could you resonate, even folks online?
you want to share anything? I can speak to it.
Okay.
Just that when I approach
Well,
somebody about a task, I
What,
know
what I'm,
the task
my
is foremost
goal
in my
and
mind.
objective is that people will begin to understand not that one is better than the other. They are all simply what an ethnic group developed to survive and thrive. That's what they did. And the reason is, if we do not come together and begin to understand the very essence of ethnic difference and work together as a heterogeneous team, we will not be prepared to meet the competition of the 21st century. We won't be able to. And the man right on your campus, you need to go and play some of his videos or read his text. Scott Page, years ago, said what it was going to be. And if we don't do it, then we won't succeed. The steel mills are not coming back to Ohio. Okay? They're not coming back. The large motor car corporations and cars, they're not coming back to Detroit. Those things are done all over the world now. So we have to, with technology and the new age of computers and so forth, if we don't understand how those things are done, look to see what we're doing with our own children. If you look at international scores for arithmetic, spelling, and writing of different cultures around the world, we're down 30, 20 something, that far down the list. How on earth are we going to compete? And then even with the education, I solve problems one way, you solve problems another way. And if I don't solve it your way, then it's not right, it's not true. We don't have time to transliterate. You know how long it took Nichols to think through something to translate so it could be counted and measured by my colleagues, my European colleagues? We just don't have that time. And if we don't understand, it isn't that one is good and one is bad. It's where people started, different places of the world, and how they had to work to survive and thrive. Some of you are of German descent. And if you're not out of the bed by 7 o'clock, somebody's in there trying to figure out why aren't you out? If your grandmother's German, or grandfather, it's even better. So you see, why? What's the rush? Well, the rush was culture.
We want to thank you. Did you want to say your point?
We're
We're really out of time, and I'm going back, but Irene has something to share.
Okay,
It wasn't anything
good.
earth-shattering. I was just trying to say that as a manager kind of person, you know, I will come up to you and I'll say, "Hi, how are you? Do you have the thing that I asked you for?" You know, I mean, I move right into the business, and so I can see that in what Dr. Nichols is talking about.
We do
want to thank everyone who came out. We said we would be through at 7:30, and we are there. But we're here for a minute. We can hang out, and if you want to have any questions of Dr. Nichols, please feel free. But we won't give a hand.
but give
But give
yourself
yourself some
appreciation
appreciation for coming out.
How many
learned
at least one thing tonight that they didn't know? Two
Two
things?
things?
Three
Three
things?
things, very good,
very
very good. That's what's important.
Yes,
Yes, you can still ask questions, but we just want to end at 7:30
for
for
those who made a commitment.
There's a young man here, Dr. Nichols, who follows you wherever you go.
Okay.
Come on,
Toby, come on up here so he can see you.
Hi there.
Dr. Nichols, it's an absolute honor. I've been chasing you for years, so it's good to actually be able to see you and have you see me. One of your incredible mentees, Dr. Joy DeGroot, is a teacher of mine. I attended her class on multi-intergenerational trauma. Another significant teacher who learned from her is another teacher of mine.
I lost your voice.
Okay, so you have to do that.
I can hear you.
Okay. Another significant teacher of mine is actually a follower of hers, and that's Dr. Stacy Patton. So the people that you taught and the branches that you left from your tree is quite significant.
Oh, thank
So
you.
I just want to thank you for all your work. Actually, I almost got misty-eyed at the thought of coming to see you today. So I really appreciate your work.
Thank you very much. I'm very glad that you were able to come.
We were on a policing panel together, and he's working with young African-American males. And when he said, "Is he really going to be there?" I said, "Absolutely."
So here's my question for you, Doc. How does an aspiring anti-racist navigate the forthcoming emotional barriers within our institutions and communities when in the process of laying out the discomforting reality of our status quo?
That is very tricky because you see, what I laid out as a framework for understanding was there was reluctance in receiving the information. And the reluctance comes from the dichotomous logic that is used by Western civilization. If I am right, you are wrong. If you are right, I am wrong. And that logic system is what people feel. So if I talked about the positiveness of just where people grew up in Africa, not needing anything to survive, in contrast to the ice-covered snow of European reality, then are you saying that yours is good, therefore mine is bad? Well, we didn't get a chance to talk about dichotomous logic, but that's what you're always running into.
Yes.
It doesn't matter how well your arguments are laid out, unless you can start with, this is not a dichotomy. That's why I was saying these are different ethnic groups. You have different experiences that come to different ways of thinking and valuing. But that wasn't heard. What people heard was, you're talking about white people, and you're saying that black people are better. Well, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I didn't say it. I just put the material on scale. You can see what you have to see. But you see, it's that insecurity, that idea of scarcity. Because if you have something, that means I don't. And if I don't have it all, I might run out. Toilet paper. I mean, just think toilet paper. This country went ballistic over toilet paper. Some societies never even have toilet paper. So the best thing I can tell you is that if you can introduce to your group the idea of dichotomous logic, forms isms. Isms give privilege. That also, that is not binary. Binary, is nothing wrong with binary. You know, plus, minus, A, B, 0, 1. That's computer, that's perfect. But when you misuse it and apply it to male, female, white, black,
Isms.
good, bad, you have the good white male and the bad black female. And then you go down the list and that's how you get your isms.
Thank you, sir. I got to meet you in person so I can have you sign this book.
I told you, he wanted to know if you were going to be here. So I said, no, he's going to be virtual. We'll just have to have you come back in physical, and we'll see what happens in November when DeGroot comes. Joy DeGroot, we're on her calendar.
You might want it in a different church. There's an AME church there.
Yes.
There, you might want it there.
Okay.
Because some people don't feel comfortable coming to this church in this neighborhood.
Ah. Okay. We have to work on that. Because you might see we have Joyce on here and Alice. They're from our church, from Fame. And Joyce and Alice, do you have anything you want to say?
This is Joyce. I enjoyed you thoroughly. Now, I didn't understand everything, but I understood enough to, well, absolutely not enough, but I understood what you were saying. And I just enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, and it was a very learning experience. So thank you so very much.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
This is Alice, and I thank you as well. I got some understanding of some things that I was curious about. And the thing that I found most interesting was when you were talking about the migration, it reminded me of Moses leading his people to the promised land, because he was taking them to where their needs could be met, to the land of milk and honey. So it was very interesting to me, and I thank you as well.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, we greatly appreciate it. We don't know how many people were online. We do know that there were several people. Well, I better stop live streaming. Come think of it. We appreciate your being with us this evening.
Well, thank you very much. I want you to know that I'm wearing my new Mandela shirt.
Oh, it's beautiful. I saw it.
Yes.
He has a store in the ghetto area there, and they produce these. My daughter bought me one 15 years ago, and I've almost worn it out. So another friend said, "You need another one." But she brought me one, and I'm wearing it so you can see it.
Well, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
We're going to end now because we have a whole weekend of activities. And we look forward to seeing you in peace.
All right. Thank you. Bye. And
Bye-bye.
if you need something, give him my email or phone number so he can call me.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
There may be something that comes up as a question. I'll be glad. Or sometimes you run into hostile audiences, and there are ways that you have to work to get through it.
I'm not at a shortage for questions for you, so trust me.
Okay. Well, we'll call me and we'll talk.
All right, absolutely.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.